began, or the 80s, they began giving the DTP vaccine at the first visit, a 3-month visit. But if they didn't hit the child exactly, if they didn't have full 90 days, of age, if they were 89 days, they wouldn't give it to them the 6-month visit. As it turns out, they had 30 years of data where half the kids were vaccinated and half the kids were not between 2 months and 5 months of age. So it was a perfect natural experiment. And they went in there and they looked at it. They looked at 30 years of data and they found that girls who got that vaccine, the DTP vaccine, were 10 times more likely to die over the next 3 months than children who did not. And they weren't dying of diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. They were protected against those by the vaccine. They were dying of anemia and bilharzia and malaria and pulmonary disease, but mainly they were dying of pneumonia. And what the researchers said is that the vaccine is almost certainly killing more children than diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis prior to the vaccine, because it was protecting them against the target illnesses, but it had ruined their immune systems. So they could not defend themselves against these other minor infections. And nobody noticed for 30 years that it was the vaccinated children who were disproportionately dying. And that's the problem with not doing, real placebo-controlled trials. None of the vaccines are ever subjected to true placebo-controlled trials. It's the only medical product that is exempt from that prior to licensure. Anyway, what happened in the DTP vaccine, when it was pulled in this country, it was pulled because so many people were suing the drug companies. Wyeth, which is now Pfizer, was the primary manufacturer. They went to the Reagan administration in 1986, and they said, you need to give us full immunity from liability for all vaccines or we're going to get out of the business. And Reagan actually said to them, why don't, they said, we're losing $20 in downstream liability for every dollar we're making in profits. And Reagan said to them, well, why don't you make the vaccine safe? And they said, because vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. That's the phrase they use, and that phrase is in the statute. And it's also in the Brusewitz case, which is the Supreme Court decision upholding that statute. And so anybody who tells you vaccines are safe and effective, the industry itself got immunity from liability by convincing the president and Congress that vaccines are unavoidably unsafe.
Now, the argument against that would obviously be they've prevented disease that would have killed untold numbers of children, right? That would be the argument they would use against that.
Exactly, and that vaccine injuries are very rare. That is the argument that is used against them. And both of those arguments in CDC's own studies have been severely challenged.